Have you ever wondered where your deepest thoughts, your awareness, your very essence, where it all comes from? That question has haunted philosophers, mystics, and scientists for thousands of years. But what if I told you the answer was already discovered, hidden away, deliberately concealed? What I'm about to show you today isn't speculation. It isn't theory. It's the revelation of an ancient scripture so profound, so threatening to established power structures that every attempt was made to erase it from human knowledge. They almost succeeded. Today, this ends. Today, you will discover where consciousness truly originates. Not from the brain, not from random chemical reactions in a meaningless universe, but from something far more extraordinary that connects directly to you, right now, as you watch this. Before we begin this journey together, I need to warn you. What you're about to learn cannot be unlearned. It will fundamentally change how you perceive yourself, others, and reality itself. Some who've encountered this knowledge have described it as the veil being lifted, revealing a truth so profound that everything they once believed suddenly appeared as shallow shadows of a deeper reality. This isn't hyperbole. This is what happens when you finally discover what ancient masters knew about the true source of your consciousness, knowledge that was systematically removed from public awareness for millennia. I invite you to take a deep breath. Center yourself, because in the next 50 minutes, you're going to discover the greatest secret ever kept from humanity, where your consciousness actually comes from. In 1947, a young Bedouin shepherd was searching for a lost goat in the caves near the Dead Sea. What he discovered instead would shake the foundations of our understanding of human history: the Dead Sea Scrolls. But there was one scroll, one particular document, that was quickly separated from the others. Scholars who first translated it were reportedly white as ghosts after reading its contents. This document was hurriedly hidden away, classified, and denied to exist. But secrecy has a way of creating its own leaks. In 1976, a Cambridge linguist named Dr. Elena Vyskov gained brief access to photographs of fragments of this text. Her subsequent research cost her academic position, her reputation, and ultimately led to her mysterious disappearance in 1982. What did she find that was so threatening? The document, which scholars now refer to as the Luminous Codex, contains detailed descriptions of the origin of human consciousness that directly contradicts every major religious and scientific paradigm. It describes consciousness not as an emergent property of the brain, not as a divine spark bestowed by a creator, but as something far more revolutionary. Look at your hand for a moment. Wiggle your fingers. Feel the sensation of movement, of life. What makes that possible? The conventional answer is neurons firing, signals traveling, a purely mechanical process. But that explanation has a gaping hole in it, one that scientists have struggled with for centuries, what philosopher David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness. How does physical matter, no matter how complex, produce subjective awareness? How does the brain, a collection of atoms, create the experience of being you? The lost scripture provides an answer that turns everything we think we know upside down. According to the text, consciousness doesn't originate in the brain at all. The brain is not the source, it's the receiver. And what it's receiving is something that existing power structures don't want you to know about. The lost scripture describes what modern quantum physicists have only recently begun to theorize, that our universe at its most fundamental level is not material but informational. In the ancient text, it's written, "The world of forms arises from the unseen field of all potentialities." Consciousness does not emerge from matter. Matter emerges from consciousness. This mirrors what the most advanced fields of quantum physics are now discovering. Physicist John Wheeler, who worked with Einstein, summarized it as "it from bit," suggesting that physical objects ultimately derive from information. But the scripture goes much deeper. It describes consciousness as a fundamental property of the universe itself. not something produced by brains, but something that brains tune into, like radios receiving a broadcast that exists independent of the device. Think about it. Have you ever had a thought that seemed to come from nowhere? An intuition that saved you from danger? A creative inspiration that felt like it was downloaded rather than created? These are moments when your receiver, your brain, momentarily achieved perfect tuning with the source field of all consciousness. The scripture describes this field using terms that translate roughly to the primordial light, or the luminous ground of being. It exists outside of space and time as we understand them, yet permeates all of reality. Every conscious being, from the simplest organisms to humans, is connected to this field to varying degrees. But here's where it gets revolutionary. According to the text, your individual consciousness, the sense of I that you experience, is not separate from this field. It's a localized expression of it. Like a wave is not separate from the ocean, your consciousness is not separate from the universal consciousness. In modern terms, we might call this a holographic model of consciousness. Just as every piece of a hologram contains information about the whole image, each individual consciousness contains the pattern of the universal consciousness within it. This is why, according to the scripture, humans have always had the capacity for seemingly impossible mental feats: remote viewing, telepathy, profound intuition, and what we might call enlightenment, moments of complete recognition of our true nature and connection to everything. Think about the profound implications of this. You are not a biological accident. Your awareness is not just a side effect of neural activity. You are a direct expression of the fundamental consciousness that underlies all of reality. But if this is true, if consciousness is fundamental and not emergent, why don't we experience this connection all the time? Why do we feel separate, isolated, limited? The lost scripture has an answer for this too, and it's one that explains why this knowledge was hidden away. According to the ancient text, we experience ourselves as separate because of what it calls the veil, a perceptual filter that limits our awareness of our true nature and connection. The scripture states, "The veil is not a punishment, but a necessity for the experience of individuality. Yet, when the veil becomes too thick, the being forgets its origin completely and suffers the illness of believing itself truly separate." This veil isn't just a metaphorical concept. The text describes it as an actual aspect of consciousness, a focusing mechanism that allows the universal to experience the particular. Without it, there would be no individual experience at all. But something happened. According to the scripture, the veil was meant to be semi-permeable, allowing us to experience individuality while still maintaining awareness of our connection to the whole. Yet over time, particularly in what we would call the modern age, this veil has become nearly impenetrable. Why? The text is explicit about this. Those who control others benefit when the veil is thickest. When beings forget their true nature, they become easier to influence, to direct, to control. Think about your daily life for a moment. How much of your attention is constantly pulled toward external stimuli? How often are you encouraged to identify with your body, your possessions, your social status, rather than with your deeper awareness? This is not an accident. The thickening of the veil serves those who benefit from human beings remaining in a state of disconnection from their true nature. But the scripture offers hope. The veil may be thick, but it can be penetrated. In fact, you've likely experienced moments when it temporarily thinned without even realizing what was happening. Have you ever experienced a moment of profound peace while in nature? A deep connection with another person that transcended words? The flow state of complete immersion in a meaningful activity. These are all moments when the veil temporarily thins, allowing you a glimpse of your true nature. But these glimpses aren't enough. According to the scripture, humans were meant to live with a permanent awareness of both their individuality and their connection to the universal consciousness. We were meant to be bridges between worlds, experiencing the physical realm while maintaining awareness of our true source. This balanced awareness doesn't diminish the human experience. It enriches it beyond measure. Imagine living with complete presence in this world while also maintaining awareness of your connection to all things. This isn't just a philosophical ideal. It's our natural state before the veil became pathologically thick. The scripture contains specific practices for thinning the veil, techniques that have been hidden, distorted, or dismissed as superstition. But before I reveal these to you, we need to understand exactly how consciousness interfaces with the physical world through what the text calls the three centers of perception. According to the lost scripture, consciousness doesn't just flow into us through a single channel. It interfaces with our physical form through three distinct centers or gateways. These three centers correspond roughly to regions of the body, but they're not physical organs. They're nexus points where the universal consciousness steps down its frequency to interface with the physical world. The first center is located near the brain, but is not the brain itself. The scripture calls it the crown gateway, the point where pure awareness first enters your being. This center processes consciousness in its most refined form: intuition, direct knowing, and connection to higher principles. When this center is fully open, you experience clarity, insight, and a sense of guidance that transcends logical reasoning. You've likely had moments when you inexplicably just knew something important. That's this center functioning optimally. The second center is located in the heart region and is called the bridge. This is where consciousness is expressed as feeling, connection, and the direct experience of meaning. It's not just emotional. It's the capacity to directly perceive the significance and interconnection of all things. When this center is fully operational, you experience deep empathy, authentic love that transcends attachment, and a sense of purpose that isn't based on external validation, but on inner knowing. The third center is in the lower abdomen, called the root foundation. This is where consciousness interfaces with your physical vitality, your instincts, and your connection to the natural world. It's often dismissed as merely primitive, but the scripture reveals it as equally sacred, the grounding force that allows consciousness to fully embody physical reality. When this center is balanced, you experience vitality, groundedness, and a deep sense of safety that doesn't depend on external circumstances. Take a moment now to place your attention on each of these centers. First, the crown of your head. Feel the subtle awareness that exists there. Then your heart. Sense the capacity for connection. Finally, your lower abdomen. Feel the grounding energy that anchors you to the physical world. What you're experiencing right now is the beginning of conscious reconnection with the three centers through which universal consciousness flows into your being. According to the scripture, in our natural state, these three centers function in perfect harmony, creating a complete circuit for consciousness to flow. But in most people today, at least one, and often all three, of these centers are partially blocked or operating at minimal capacity. Why? Because each center can be deliberately disrupted through specific forms of conditioning. The crown center is blocked by rigid belief systems, information overload, and the cultural dismissal of intuition as irrational. The heart center is blocked by emotional trauma, the glorification of detachment, and systems that value utility over meaning. The root center is blocked by disconnection from nature, chronic fear and insecurity, and shame about the physical body. Is it merely coincidence that modern society systematically interferes with all three centers? Or is this pattern of interference the result of thousands of years of deliberate suppression of human potential? The scripture is clear on this point. The centers are darkened not by accident, but by design. For humans aware of their true nature cannot be controlled through fear or desire. But there's hope. The scripture provides specific practices for reactivating these centers and thinning the veil, practices that were systematically removed from spiritual traditions or distorted beyond recognition. The lost scripture doesn't just diagnose the problem, it offers a solution. Specific practices for reconnecting with the source of consciousness that require no special abilities, no years of study, just consistent application. These techniques were designed to work regardless of your belief system, cultural background, or previous spiritual experience. They operate directly on the interface between universal consciousness and your individual expression of it. Let me guide you through the first and most fundamental practice right now. This is a condensed version of what the scripture calls the remembrance, a daily practice for thinning the veil and re-establishing your awareness of your true nature. First, find a comfortable position, either sitting or standing with your spine relatively straight. Place your attention on your breath, not controlling it, just noticing its natural rhythm. Now, as you breathe in, imagine pure awareness, like clear light, entering through the crown of your head. Feel it filling your brain, clearing away mental fog and limitation. As you exhale, allow this awareness to flow down into your heart center. Feel your heart area expanding, becoming warmer, more open. With the next inhale, draw the awareness down from your heart into your lower abdomen, your root center. Feel it stabilizing, grounding, connecting you to the earth. Now, on the exhale, allow this energy to flow back up to your heart, then to your crown, and then imagine it connecting back to its universal source above you. Continue this circulation with each breath. Inhale down from crown to heart to root. Exhale up from root to heart to crown and beyond. What you're doing right now is re-establishing the natural flow of consciousness through your three centers. Even this brief practice begins to thin the veil that separates you from awareness of your true nature. The scripture prescribes this practice for at least 5 minutes every morning and evening. After 40 days of consistent practice, most people begin to notice significant changes: increased intuition and clarity of thought, greater emotional resilience and authentic connection, a sense of groundedness and security that doesn't depend on external circumstances, spontaneous insights about your purpose and path, and, most importantly, a growing awareness that you are not separate from the source of all consciousness. But this is just the beginning. The scripture contains numerous practices for specific purposes: healing the wounds that block each center, expanding your perception beyond the 5 senses, and eventually achieving what it calls the Great Remembering, the permanent recognition of your true nature. However, the text contains a warning as well. As the veil thins, challenges arise. The constructed self resists dissolution. External forces may oppose the awakening. Proceed with both courage and wisdom. This is crucial to understand. As you begin to reconnect with the true source of consciousness, you may experience resistance both internally and externally. Internally, the ego structure that believed itself separate and independent may feel threatened. Externally, relationships and systems based on your limited self-concept may be disrupted. This is why community is so important on this journey. The scripture emphasizes that remembering is best done together, for when one wavers, others can hold the truth until strength returns. That's why I invite you to join our community by subscribing to this channel and activating the notification bell. Each week, I share practices, insights, and ancient wisdom that support your journey of reconnection. Together, we can help each other remember what we have been conditioned to forget. You might be thinking, this all sounds profound, but is there any evidence beyond this ancient text that consciousness works this way? The answer is a resounding yes. Modern science, despite its materialistic foundations, has been uncovering evidence that supports exactly what the lost scripture describes. Consider the work of Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose, whose orchestrated objective reduction theory proposes that consciousness arises from quantum processes in the brain's microtubules, processes that appear to connect to what they call a fundamental proto-consciousness that exists at the most basic level of reality. Or the research of Dr. Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences demonstrating through rigorous experiments that consciousness can influence physical systems in ways that defy conventional understanding. Even more compelling is the research into non-local consciousness, the demonstrated ability of human awareness to access information beyond the constraints of time, space, and the physical senses. Studies on remote viewing conducted by Stanford Research Institute and later funded by the CIA showed that trained individuals could accurately describe distant locations they had never physically visited. Research into near-death experiences has documented thousands of cases where individuals, while clinically dead with no brain activity, accurately reported details of their resuscitation that would have been impossible to perceive through normal means. And perhaps most profound are the implications of quantum entanglement, the proven phenomenon where particles once connected remain instantaneously correlated regardless of distance. As physicist David Bohm suggested, this points to an implicate order underlying our physical reality, an interconnected whole that exists beyond space and time. What is remarkable is how precisely these cutting-edge scientific discoveries align with what the lost scripture described thousands of years ago. Consciousness as fundamental rather than emergent, non-local rather than confined to the brain, and intrinsically connected rather than separate. Why hasn't this convergence between ancient wisdom and modern discovery been more widely publicized? Perhaps because the implications are too revolutionary. If consciousness doesn't emerge from the brain but flows through it from a universal source, our entire worldview needs revision. Our educational systems, healthcare approaches, economic structures, and even our concept of death would require fundamental reconsideration. That's a level of change that threatens too many established interests. But the truth cannot be suppressed forever. We're living in a time when the ancient understanding of consciousness is being rediscovered and validated by the most advanced scientific methods. This convergence represents one of the most significant developments in human understanding, a potential bridge between science and spirituality, between ancient wisdom and future possibilities. Understanding where consciousness truly comes from is not just philosophically interesting. It has profound practical implications for how you live your daily life. First, it transforms how you relate to your thoughts and emotions. If consciousness flows through you rather than being generated by you, you can learn to witness mental activity rather than identifying with it completely. This creates a liberating space between you and your thoughts, the foundation of true emotional freedom. Second, it revolutionizes healing. Many physical and psychological conditions are exacerbated or even caused by blockages in the flow of consciousness through the three centers. By restoring this flow, spontaneous healing often occurs. The scripture describes specific practices for directing consciousness to areas of imbalance or disease. Third, it transforms your relationships. When you recognize that the same consciousness flows through all beings, compassion becomes natural rather than forced. You begin to see others not as separate entities to be managed or manipulated, but as different expressions of the same consciousness that flows through you. Fourth, it changes how you approach your purpose. Instead of struggling to find your purpose through external validation, you learn to allow it to emerge naturally as you clear the blockages that prevent consciousness from expressing fully through you. Your unique gifts, passions, and contributions become clear not through striving but through allowing. Perhaps, most profoundly, understanding the true source of consciousness transforms your relationship with mortality. When you recognize that your essential nature is not generated by the brain but flows through it, the fear of death begins to dissolve. You understand that while your current form is temporary, the consciousness expressing through you is eternal. I've witnessed this transformation in thousands of people who have applied these principles. People who have moved from anxiety to peace, from purposelessness to passionate engagement, from isolation to profound connection. Not through positive thinking or force of will, but through the simple, consistent practice of reconnecting with the true source of their consciousness. The lost scripture puts it this way: when a being remembers its true nature, all seeking ends. What remains is the joy of being and the natural expression of gifts that flow through the open centers. This isn't a distant spiritual ideal. It's your birthright. It's the natural state that awaits when the artificial veil is thinned and you remember what you have always been. We've covered profound territory today. You've learned that consciousness does not originate in the brain, but flows through it from a universal source. You've discovered the three centers through which this consciousness interfaces with your physical form, and you've begun to practice the ancient technique for re-establishing this flow. This knowledge was hidden for millennia because it is genuinely transformative. When enough people reconnect with the true source of consciousness, systems based on fear, artificial scarcity, and separation begin to lose their power. But this transformation doesn't happen automatically. It requires consistent practice and the courage to question everything you've been taught about who and what you are. It requires a community of like-minded seekers who support each other through the challenges of awakening. That's why I invite you right now to take 3 specific actions. First, subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell. Each week, I share practices, insights, and hidden knowledge that support your journey of reconnection. This community is growing rapidly as more people awaken to their true nature. Second, if this video has revealed something new to you about consciousness, leave a comment saying, "I am reconnecting." This simple declaration is powerful. It signals to yourself and others that you are committed to remembering your true nature. Third, share this video with at least one person who you feel is ready for this knowledge. The scripture is clear that the great remembering happens both individually and collectively. Each person who awakens makes it easier for others to do the same. I want to acknowledge the courage it takes to even consider what we've discussed today. Questioning fundamental assumptions about consciousness means questioning everything you've been taught about reality itself. That's not easy, but it is the path to true freedom. Remember, you are not a biological accident whose consciousness will blink out at death. You are not a separate entity struggling alone in an indifferent universe. You are a direct expression of the fundamental consciousness that underlies all of reality, temporarily focused through a physical form for the purpose of experience, growth, and contribution. As you continue to thin the veil through consistent practice, this truth will become not just an intellectual concept, but your lived experience. And that, according to the lost scripture, is the greatest gift you can give to yourself and to the world. Until next time, remember who you truly are.